Financial Survival Network, helping you to survive and thrive in the new economy. Get our complimentary newsletter at financialsurvivalnetwork.com. This is the Financial Survival Network.
Financial Survival Network is presented to you by Regal Assets. Buy and sell physical gold and silver through your existing retirement plan, 100% tax-free with Regal Assets. If you want to include physical gold or silver in your existing IRA or old 401k, request your free investment kit, which was recently featured in the Forbes and Smart Money Wall Street Journal magazines. Call toll-free 855-678-6620, 855-678-6620, or visit regalassets.com. And the issue of the day is beautiful deleveraging. Can it happen to you? Can it happen to the United States? Can it possibly happen at all? Well, Dana Meador, frequent guest of FinancialSurvivalNetwork.com, is on to discuss the concept and to see whether, in fact, it is a possibility for these here United States. And Dana, welcome back. How are you?
Hi, Carrie. I'm doing great. How are you?
We're doing great. Just getting acclimated. All the equipment is working. It's back to normal finally. And, I have my morning coffee clutch. It's the Starbucks that I walk to because I've pledged to get in 2 miles of walking every single morning, these mornings have just been so gorgeous. You can't even imagine. But anyway, enough. People are sick of hearing about where I moved to and all that. And I understand. So the clutch was there and, they're still caught up on the election, but a couple of the people there realize that we are in a depression, which they don't really know what a depression is, but to define it as Bob Hoy does, it's a credit bust. It's where you had a huge period of monetary creation, credit creation, and it ends in a bust invariably. And then the policymakers in the country are faced with certain decisions, and you're big on a beautiful deleveraging. Just tell us, what is a beautiful deleveraging?
Well, what I get from my clients a lot, is gold and silver the only option? Are there things we should be doing instead? Why do so many of these hedge fund managers, have such faith that we're going to get through all this and it's just going to be a little pain, but it's nothing horrible. And so one of the guys that speaks most eloquently about the concept of deleveraging is a guy named Ray Dalio. And he is the head of Bridgewater Associates, and they are up there with, all the big wigs in terms of amount of money that they manage and so forth and so on. So I thought your listeners might be interested to hear what Ray has to say, and then why I think that it's probably incorrect. So according to Ray, there are 3 different types of deleveragings that you can have, and I agree with these. He can have either an ugly deflationary deleveraging, which would be like Spain or Japan, or some the U.S. from 1929 to 1931.
Correct. Yeah.
When no money is being printed, austerity is the watchword of the day, and you just have this crashing GDP. And no matter how much austerity you implement, you cannot get out of that debt to GDP trap. So, for example, Spain started there in 1999. They started with a 400% debt to GDP ratio, and they now have almost a 500% debt to GDP ratio. So a deflationary deleveraging is ugly in that you never get out of the trap. Then you have the inflationary deleveraging, which is like Weimar Germany, that lasted from 1919 to 1923. And Ray maintains that you see that most often when you have debts denominated in another currency other than your own currency. So, for example, in Weimar Germany, they had a lot of reparations that they owed in US dollars and British pounds and so forth. And they could never print enough money in Reichsmarks to actually pay off all of that because the currency conversions worked against them. So the more money they printed, the greater the debts were, and they could never get out from under them without an actual event of default. So then there were a few points in time where there were what were called beautiful deleveragings. So a beautiful deleveraging has the right combination and the right mix of debt reduction, austerity, transferring wealth from haves to have-nots, and debt monetization. So basically, debt reduction and austerity are both depressing. They are deflationary forces. So those have to be combated by growth and money printing effectively, and lower interest rates, the lowest interest rates they can possibly get. Because a beautiful leveraging occurs when your nominal GDP growth is greater than your nominal interest rate on your debt, so that you actually have something left over in your income and after income and inflation to pay off your note, and then you can have principal reductions. So the theory is that the United States, since the institution of QE, is in a beautiful deleveraging. And that's why you see so much complacency in the market today. People believe that we really are able to get some sort of multiplier effect out of the money printing that the government has done. And it's very interesting when you type into your search engine Bridgewater Associates Beautiful Deleveraging, it'll pull up a lovely PDF that goes through the whole deal. But basically, they break down the U.S.'s deleveraging between pre and post QE. So in pre-QE, it went from, our debt to GDP ratio went from 342% to 368%. And since QE, it's gone from 348 to 334, or a 34% reduction in the debt to GDP. So this looks great. It looks, you look at the government sector has gone up 6%, but the private sector has gone down 20%. So it looks like we're in the middle of this beautiful deleveraging. But the truth of the matter is that of that nominal GDP growth of 3.5%, of which, and so you have to have a nominal GDP growth that is in excess of your yield on your bond. We only have a nominal GDP growth in excess of government bond yield of 0.3% per annum. So if we were to keep up with this and just go like we're going now, it would take us 100 years to deliver in this quote unquote beautiful deleveraging, because our growth is not there. So in every beautiful deleveraging you've ever seen in the past, whether it was the U.S. 32 to 37 and post World War II, or Great Britain from 47 to 69 in the aftermath of World War II, you always see a high income growth component to this. You see wages going up. You see boots on the ground, building things, reconstruction. In the aftermath of the Civil War, and there's some impetus internally to generating a lot of income and a lot of just real growth, private sector growth, and the government doesn't have to do very much heavy lifting. The amount of money that has to be printed is very small.
Sure, and really, we're just not in that type of situation, because those economies had hit bottom and they had no place else to go but up. I would argue that we haven't hit bottom because of all the money printing that the Fed has done to try to keep the game going, to keep the machine running. And, we're getting to the point where there just isn't going to be enough money in the world to keep it going. So we're going to go one way or the other, or we might go both. We might go first inflationary and then the brakes get put on and then we go deflationary. But all this presumes, his theory, Diallo's theory, presumes that somebody's in control here. And I don't know, I'm just not seeing the guy at the wheel being in control.
And it's assuming that he's stimulating in the right way. So right now, Bernanke should be stimulating, and there should be fiscal stimulus and monetary stimulus in a way that creates growth, that engenders real economic growth. But instead, the fiscal stimulus is just going to kind of run in place. Pay food stamps and current entitlements and current defense and all of that. It's not really additional projects. It's not additional stimulus. So the Keynesians are all upset because there's not enough of that kind of thing happening. And then on top of that, Bernanke's not helping because what is he buying? He's buying U.S. Treasury obligations and he's buying mortgage-backed securities, neither of which act as any kind of stimulus on the economy. It's a tight, closed system where the money that's printed goes to the banks and the government, but it doesn't ever get out to the real people except in terms of food and fuel. Yeah. The payments that are made, it's really interesting to me that the inflation pressures that we're seeing the most are food and fuel, which is exactly what you would expect in this kind of closed system, where the only money that leaks out to the people is for Social Security benefits or food stamps or things that do affect food and fuel.
Yeah, well, don't forget that we do have the Obama phones. They are making it out to people. So, you got to be grateful for small favors here, really.
So the excitement that's happening with respect to, my clients is that if Romney gets elected, he's going to be this magic person who's going to be able to come in and actually engender growth. And he's going to do things that will engender growth in a way that Obama hasn't. And that remains to be seen, because one of the funny things about an ugly deleveraging, deflationary deleveraging, like in Japan and like in Spain and in Greece, is you see massive turnovers in the people and who runs the government. So, like, for example, there have been something like 7 prime ministers of Japan in 5 years. Sure. Because they just can't get it done. And then they throw themselves on the sword and they resign, and somebody else comes in, can't get it done, throws themselves on the sword and resigns. So I just don't see, that'll last, the honeymoon or that happiness, if Romney gets elected, if Obama screws up the debate tonight the way he screwed up the last debate he did, where he phoned it in, Romney might legitimately get elected. And then at that point, you're going to see whether Romney can engender any of this growth that we need to see. And in the absence of that,
it's just not going to happen because one man cannot do it. And, are you going to shut down the Fed? I mean, really, it all goes back to the monetary system, why we're in this mess. And only a wholesale reform over time of the monetary system and the political system can get us to where we need to be, and there's no political will to do it. Nobody got up at that debate and said, yes, I am going to cut Medicare because we can't afford it because the country is bankrupt. Oh, and by the way, that prescription drug benefit that you got that you shouldn't have, I'm taking that back. No one can do that. And once they're in office, if they want to get reelected, I don't think they can do it then either. So I'm a little bit more negative on this, and I think we're past the point of redemption on it. I think QE3 is the end because it's the recognition that hard choices will not be made by the political leaders. They will not cut back, and they will not, take on the banksters and liquidate these too big to fails. And if you can't do that and then abolish all the derivatives, where does that leave you?
And not only that, I mean, the question becomes one of, everybody wants to know, is this going to be an ugly deflationary deleveraging or an ugly inflationary deleveraging? And I think, people need to really recognize that there is no way that Romney or Obama are going to allow us to become like Japan. There's no percentage in it. There's no percentage in us becoming like Greece or like Spain or like Japan, where the debts mount as a percentage of GDP, and no amount of austerity can cure your ills. 20 years later, Japan is worse than it's ever been, and they are not fixed. So, can we have an inflationary deleveraging? And I believe we can, because I believe that the more heavy lifting that the Fed has to do. So, for example, if any or all of this fiscal cliff get put into place, we are going to see an effect on GDP, and it's going to be a negative effect. We're already at like 1.2 incremental GDP.
It's going down.
It's poor. It's nothing. There's nothing there. And so there's no real growth in this economy. It's all the heavy lifting on growth is having to be done by the Fed, and they are having to put all of the money in to make it. So that means that in order to have any deleveraging at all, we have to at least beat the interest rate on the debt plus incremental borrowings that the government does every year. You're talking there, if you try to put those two numbers together, you're looking at an 8% structural deficit and 3.5% interest on that debt. So you're looking at the Fed having to do something like a 12% lifting job annually. So, and that's just to run in place. That doesn't even address off balance sheet items.
Yeah, that's not going to happen. So I hate to say this is a case where the reality is going to overtake all the theories. And at that point, whatever is going to happen is going to happen. I hope it's not hyperinflation, but certainly we're seeing inflation pick up. We're seeing purchasing power go down, and inflation will probably increase unless one of these too big to fail banks collapses, which I don't believe they'll allow to happen. And we have a major blowout in the money supply, and, we have a deflation. So, Dana,
well, I saw Sheila Bair speak, and she said that her next big concern was a bond bubble. She believes wholeheartedly that we're not addressing our problems. Interest rates are going to go up. The market is going to speak to this. So, you talk quite often about the banks closing their doors and having some sort of bank holiday. And people who are there are three ways to trade gold. You either park it and leave it. You can Momo trade. So, and there's something happening, you think it's going to be good, you pile on and then you get off and you trade in and out of it. Or you can buy the stocks of the mining companies. So, if you believe that we are going to get to the point in this economy where the Fed's doing all the heavy lifting and the Chinese don't like it and the Japanese don't like it and all the people who hold our bonds don't like earning nothing while the inflation is going through the roof, you need to park your money now.
Absolutely. Get ready for it. Be prepared.
Yeah, talk to the folks at Miles Franklin. Yeah. They're so good to deal with.
Hey, we love them, and we also love Regal Assets. They're the official show sponsor now. Go there, call them, tell them that we sent you, and you get a big discount. And also, when you're talking about preparing, go to preparewise.com, get some food, type in Lutz in the discount code, because you don't know where this thing's going to wind up, and it could go
please,
five
please
different
don't
ways.
Leave your money sitting in cash in a pension fund or in a 401k. If you do,
say goodbye.
Don't think about the daily fluctuations in the metal prices. Just buy it, go to sleep, and when you wake up someday, it will be worth more. I promise you, it will be worth more.
And we got to get going, but it's like Charles Biederman says, right now, silver is a horrible investment, but one day you're going to wake up and silver will be the best investment in the world. Dana, if people want to find out more about you, where should they go?
Wealthshift.org.
Wealthshift.org. Dana, it's been a pleasure as always.